It's like there's stuff stuck in there, and
Mhm.
walking for an extended period every day, like at least an hour, it kind of shakes it out. All the kinds of little things that build up throughout the days, moving your body, it brings it to conscious awareness, and then it also kind of helps resolve things. There's something about having your body engaged with some degree of fitness that just facilitates that whole process of regulating everything and getting things like sorted inside. At least that's how it is for me.
Hello, and welcome to the Personal Development School podcast. I am so excited you're here. I am your co host, Thais Gibson, along with our new special host, Mike DiZio. This is a podcast that discusses everything related to integrated attachment theory, the new attachment theory, along with the subconscious mind, relationships, communication, needs, boundaries, and so much more. Throughout this podcast, you'll see a series of episodes I upload with new information, educational tips all about how to thrive in relationships and really master your emotional state in your life, along with special guests hosted by Mike DiZio to discuss all of these amazing topics in some longer form content. Thank you so much for being here, and I really hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Personal Development School podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. On today's interview series, we have a special guest who's here to talk about his journey. We'll get to learn a lot more about the dismissive avoidant attachment style. And, within the Personal Development School, we see dozens and dozens, hundreds and hundreds about questions on, how to get your DA to move closer to you. How do I get my DA to communicate more? How do I get my DA to share their feelings and emotions more? So, it's really a treat when we get to speak to somebody who is dismissive avoidant, healed dismissive avoidant, and kind of get to know a little more and dig a little deeper. So hopefully the audience can get a better idea of what's going on sort of in the mind of the DA and what's, what they need, their journey, things like that. So we're going to get really, really in depth about that. I just wanted to mention, because this is such a topic and a question that people want to know so much about, Tice recently did a 5-part series on YouTube, and it's about understanding and connecting to a dismissive avoidant. The first episode is how to deeply connect with a dismissive avoidant. The second one's how to bypass a dismissive avoidance defenses in order to connect. Third one is what are the dismissive avoidance top needs in a relationship. Fourth one is how to deeply understand a dismissive avoidant. And the last one is what are the DA's expectations in relationships from others. So highly, highly recommend you watch those videos. I'll link the videos in the show notes so you can check those out. Whether you're a partner of a DA, whether you have DA relatives, friends, family, this will be a really, really important series for you to check out. And if you're a DA as well, I invite you to watch the series just to get get to know a little more about yourself and understand what's going on sort of inside. Because with awareness, then we can obviously take steps to healing. So on to today's episode. We have a really special guest today. He's a certified integrated attachment theory coach with the Personal Development School. He's been a member of the school for almost 4 years, and he's a healing dismissive avoidant, as I mentioned. Outside of coaching and studying attachment theory, he's a lover of food and nature. So PDS podcast listeners and viewers, let's give a warm welcome to Ben Glidden. Hello, Ben.
Thanks, Mike.
How are you doing today?
Howdy. Good to be here.
Awesome. Nice to see you. Ben, just a simple question. Let's start with your background. Can you just let the viewers know a little bit about your background?
Yeah, Mike. As you mentioned, I'm a healing dismissive avoidant, and I grew up in the Midwest. I'm in my late 30s now, and I spent a lot of time moving around the Midwest. Had a kind of quiet family life with mostly my mother, and my dad was around a bit. No siblings, and not a strong connection to family on my side, but we did have a big family around, so that was nice to have them around when I was local to them. And then in adulthood, I've been to college a few times and worked in like support services for different people. And now I'm doing the coaching thing, and I'm loving the whole attachment theory and that whole field, and the opportunities there to help people.
That's excellent. Thanks for sharing. So just curious about your own journey and sort of the steps that brought you to where you are now. Was there like a catalyst or like a rock bottom moment, some sort of aha moment? Was there something that happened that sort of opened you up to diving into personal development work and healing your attachment style?
Yeah, there was a realization a few years back, and this was a few years after my divorce. So I was actually married for a good 10 years of my adult life, most of my 20s, stretching into my early 30s. And then I got a divorce. And a couple years after that, after a few kind of shallow relationships and stuff that didn't really go anywhere, there wasn't a lot of traction, I realized there's something wrong here. And I think I need to look into that. So that was kind of like the rock bottom. It was the realization that the relationships just weren't getting traction. They weren't sticking around. There was not enough material there to like hold the pieces together and make stuff stick. That's what happened.
Okay. And did you do some like searching around, or like how did you sort of, obviously I know you're in the personal development school, you've been there for 4 years, but were you searching around for things and then you just happen to stumble upon personal development school, or what was sort of the process there?
So as PDS students or anybody with attachment theory background or knowledge of core wounds will know that you can have a wound of I'm defective, or another version is there's something wrong with me. And so I kind of had this sense throughout most of my life. So I had been dabbling in like mental health services and different areas of that field, doing my own reading and research over the years, even since I was like a teenager. But it was off and on, and I didn't really find any kind of modality that that was useful to me or that I was ready for. And so a few years ago, when I had this realization about my relationships, there was something that just stuck in or popped out in my brain. And it was like, hey, I know there's this thing called attachment theory. And I think it has something to do with like the stuff you experience in childhood affects what you experience later. And so it's sort of like a one-to-one kind of thing. Like what goes before, in some sense, determines what comes later. And so I had that in my head, and I didn't know anything more about attachment theory. So that's when I looked it up. I was like, okay, this feels like this could be something. So I Googled it.
Good old Google for healing.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I'm really glad you found the personal development school. You touched on the I'm defective core wound. That was definitely one that I struggled with massively most of my life, before I knew about attachment style as well. I'm sure I mentioned in previous podcasts, but dismissive avoidant was like my highest percentage, and then fearful avoidant following very closely behind. So I'm not like a true DA, but I definitely have a lot of the DA wounds. I am defective was huge. Like I remember even meeting girls, and like if they wanted to date me, I'd tell them like, just to let you know, like I'm screwed up, like I have some serious problems, and like just trying to let them know like I don't know what I'm doing in relationships, and like I'm probably gonna upset you or frustrate you. Like it almost came with like a warning, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I felt so screwed up, and I felt like I just gotten like a raw deal in sort of the personality in what I was given. So the I'm defective core wounds is not a fun one, but it can definitely be reprogrammed. Tice likes to say, whatever was programmed into you as a child, you can program out. Anything that's programmed in, you can reprogram. So that's the beauty of all this kind of work. But I know for DAs, it can be really scary because a lot of it involves sort of vulnerability and digging into emotions and, things that usually avoidants are scared of and want to push away. So, to anybody out there, avoidance who are doing sort of the work, lots of respect, because it can be scary and uncomfortable, but as we'll find out a little later in the interview, hearing Ben's journey, it's worth it, and you're worth it. So, and you mentioned, so you didn't know about attachment theory at all before you joined personal development school. It was something that was totally new to you when you...
Yeah, it was like something that I had read about, so many years ago, really briefly, just enough to know that there was like this kind of cause and effect thing from early formative years to what I'm experiencing now. And when that popped in my head randomly, I was like, oh, okay, this feels like something worth looking at. And so I found Thais through that pretty quickly.
Nice. That's excellent. So I know you've done a lot of work to, become more secure. And we know you're a DA. What would you say is the most hardest or some of the most challenging things that have happened to you as a result, of being dismissive avoidant? What were some of the most challenging things in the past that you found?
Oh gosh, yeah, so much. I think so. My DA attachment style was pretty broadly applied. So I know in PDS we have the attachment quiz, and now it has the family and the friends and romantic relationships included there. And so looking back, growing up, I spent a lot of time alone. And so I had a few friends growing up, close friends, but the emotional connection wasn't really strong. And so I didn't connect well with family. At least I didn't feel it on my side. And then also romantically, I just had a few kind of, I don't want to say meaningless, but pretty shallow relationships when I was younger before I got married. And then with friendships, it was kind of the same thing. Like I had really good attachments, but I guess this is a common thing for like a lot of men, where we hang out and we can be really close and know each other really well for a long time, but there is like a whole field of stuff that we never delve into, that we never talk about. And then for me, I think it was ramped up. So I had just like a handful of close friends here and there as I grew up, and I moved around a lot. So that kind of helped, or that kind of, I think, reinforced what was going on my side. And then when I was married, this was the typical kind of DA, or the avoidant anxious thing. And I just did not have the tools for the entire duration. And it's sad, but I didn't have the awareness of what was going on. I didn't understand what was going on. And there's little times of therapy and me looking for help in various ways, but it didn't really have the tools, like enough pieces. And even the stuff that I looked at didn't have the explanatory power that I needed to get traction and to get things figured out, to kind of develop a more empowered state. And then after marriage, it was the same kind of thing. Romantically, it was shallow relationships. There's fear there, and like you, I actually thought I was pretty FA when I got into the school for quite a long time, because I did have the kind of body of FA wounds and stories and meanings and things layered on top of the ground layer, the base layer of DA stuff, such that I kind of, like, my conscious mind existed in that stuff. And I didn't know that I was DA because it wasn't even accessible. So that was a really weird experience to kind of be that out of touch with myself for so long, until things started to click through some of the practices But yeah, it was kind of, my attachment style was pervasive. It covered everything. It covered friendships, family relationships, romantic relationships, even professional relationships, and my sense of living the world and the things I was involved in, activities I did, hobbies, everything. It was pervasive.
Yeah. Wow. You touched on a lot of things there. I just want to ask, like during your marriage, the 10-year marriage, did you feel, because you know you had the I am defective wound, I'm not good enough wound, were you putting sort of a lot of the problems on yourself, as if like, okay, I'm the problem here. I have to change myself, because if I wasn't so screwed up, this relationship would probably be fine.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I absolutely was. And it's kind of the classic thing where you have that subconscious wound that is forming your interpretation of your experiences. And so you can pour helpful things into that, but if it doesn't get at the root, then you're still pouring everything into a hole labeled, I am not enough, I'm defective,
Right.
I am bad, all these things. And so it's like there wasn't any there's all these little epiphany moments after you read something that sounds so helpful and life-changing, but if it doesn't change the root of the issue, then it's not changed, and you actually kind of feel worse, because that was another thing that felt so right, that was going to help you, and then it didn't pan out. It didn't do what you thought it might do.
Totally.
And, yeah.
Or you feel good for a week and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I've hit goal.
Yeah.
And like, finally, the rest of my life's going to be good and comfortable. And then a week later, you're sort of back to where you were. And, you know, that week where you felt so great, sort of like a distant memory. And you're like, oh my gosh, what do I have to do here?
Yeah. And another thing on that, did I feel that sense of responsibility? I absolutely did. And so I had the wounds. I blamed myself. This is my problem. It was, I'm defective, I'm not good enough, etc. But I also still had that classic, when you don't have the tools, then of course there was like blame for my partner.
Right.
Absolutely. Sure. Like she's too crazy, or she's got too much going on, or blah blah blah. It's like when you are met with the body of somebody else's expression and experience that is more emotionally engaged and has like a wider emotional range, that for us, like, that looks crazy, because we don't feel that. And so it's like, what is this person doing? What is going on in their head? And so, yeah, since I didn't have the tools to understand what was going on and take responsibility for myself, I was with those wounds, those stories, like, oh, it's all my fault and I'm defective and there's something wrong with me and that's why it's not working. These are not ways that are real methods of taking responsibility and accountability.
Right.
They're just wounds that are interpreting your experience. So they're not actually productive mechanisms. And so why not throw in some blame for other people into the mix? That makes it feel better in the moment, but there's no, you're not going anywhere with that.
No, for sure. We're already, blaming and shaming. And then if we just keep piling it on, and then with our partner adding to it, like, it's just deepens the wounds even more. Right. So, and I definitely resonate with what you mentioned about how, you could blame it on your ex-partners. Like, I used to point to all my exes, like, oh, this one was too clingy, or this one she was crazy. Like, it was always the other person who was causing issues. And it wasn't obviously until I examined, my wounds and how they played a part in all of it. Then once you sort of heal those wounds, then you start to see how much power and how much you can affect the relationship in a positive way. instead of feeling disempowered and, always blaming it on the other person, which we know doesn't really go anywhere. Okay, thank you for sharing. So what would you say has been one of the biggest areas of inner growth? We'll start with sort of inner growth, and then we could talk about relationship changes, but sort of like inner growth, can you think of any areas that you've really changed by doing this work?
Yeah, and I'm going to frame it just in terms of like the BTEA equation that we have in the school: beliefs, thoughts, emotions, actions. And for anybody listening that doesn't know, it's kind of a chain of causality, a chain of like a related chain within us, where we have emotions that are connected to thoughts and stories, and so they kind of spring from the thoughts, and then we have core beliefs under that inform the stories. Those are like the deeper, more concrete beliefs that are kind of pervasive, and then all the little stories about the little experiences come from that. And then of course we have actions, which are just our actions in the world. And all of these things, each part of that chain, the BTEA, is something we can look at and use that to kind of fill out our knowledge of the other parts of that chain. And so if we don't have the self-knowledge, we don't have experience with that, then we might look at our behavior. Like for me, it'd be binging television, like just watching TV for a really long time. And that's the action. So then what is the emotion connected to that, or what is the belief connected to that, the underlying the deeper belief, or even just the thoughts, the stories. And a lot of that can just be we can fill that out using any part on that we can access. So I guess what the biggest area of growth for me is learning that inner causality, learning the interrelatedness of all the parts of me, everything that I'm doing and thinking and feeling all the time, and how it's connected to my bodily sensations, like the emotions showing up as feelings in the body as feedback. That's the biggest growth. That's the part that I was totally numb to for my whole life. And so I would say, like, I could experience the negative emotions for sure. And I think maybe if somebody asked me in those times what I felt, I might say like, oh, I'm pissed off, or I'm irritated, or whatever. I think a lot of times I would say, I don't feel anything. It's nothing, just endless repression, endless denial. But getting into that whole inner experience and realizing that everything is connected and everything is kind of feedback that can lead to other dimensions of awareness, that's been my biggest growth. And it's something that I still work on today.
For sure.
I still enjoy it, learning the inner world.
Yeah, for sure. And especially for avoidance, like our range, because we suppressed emotions at such a young age, like emoting, we tried, it didn't feel safe, it didn't get met with, love and attention or whatever we needed. So we learned at a very young age to sort of suppress those emotions and feelings. So then in adulthood, I make the joke that there's a feelings wheel that you can kind of Google online, and there's like a list of like 80 different shades of how you can be feeling at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
And usually like dismissive avoidance, their feelings wheel is like maybe 4 quadrants: feeling good, good, bad, happy, angry. Like there's not the big range. So really part of the work and what helps so much, and you explained in personal development school, is kind of getting to more in touch with your emotions and feelings, and getting to use those as feedback. And with BTA, you get to have a bird's eye view of what's going on the inside. If you never really analyze that, you don't really see the chain of events that happen through beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and actions. So it's really wonderful when you get to put that on paper and see how, when you change some of the variables, you can change the output.
Yeah.
That's really great. Thanks for sharing that with us. So then in your relationships, what would you say, sort of, since you've done this healing work, how have your relationships changed, whether it be romantic relationship, family, friends? Where have you seen sort of growth and change?
Yeah, this is huge too. And it's still ongoing, of course, for me. But the changes are kind of astronomical. Like I never would have, I didn't even have the ability to imagine the kind of things that I experience now in all these areas. So it's pretty cool. I guess I'll start with family. And I'm still working on like being closer to them. We don't have any like extreme rifts in our family or anything like that. It's just, for me, on my side, it's the pervasive distance, the pervasive feeling of disconnection, and just kind of like stepping out over time and exploring that and getting closer to family members, having more vulnerable connections, and especially on my side, releasing a lot of the negative beliefs there. And it was like due to like the absence of the connection on my side, I kind of had this feeling that was like, who are these people, you know?
Were they trying to connect with you, and you, like, they weren't all avoidance in your family? It was more people trying to get closer to you, and you were the one kind of only going
I think there's probably a little bit of avoidance like sprinkle around, but it's mostly, it's like people kind of reaching out to me over the years, recurringly, and then me feeling kind of weird about it, like, oh, what is this? And then creating that distance. And so, one thing that we do is we kind of interpret avoidance on the part of other people, but it's actually something that we're creating through through just maintaining that level in the relationship without knowing it. And so I think that was like a constant for me with family. So now it's not really about repairing conflicts or like, engaging in like forgiveness and stuff like that. I mean, there's always that with every relationship, but it's more like me feeling progressively more comfortable through exposure of like dipping my foot in the water and then getting closer to people and feeling comfortable there, and seeing, how does it feel, how does it go? And it turns out that when you do a lot of the work and you have the awareness of like triggers and core wounds and your your personality needs and stuff, then there's a lot more of a landscape there to explore than we may have previously thought. So that's just the family. Romantic, it's kind of the same thing, but that one for me always had a little bit more difficult triggers, and that's where like the FA stuff kind of popped out a little bit. But it feels really good to be able to examine those triggers in the moment and then talk about them with a partner, to explore that stuff. And this is a crazy thing for my avoidance side, is of not having this language before, to even explore this stuff and talk about it. Now it's present, and to see myself continually talking through an issue with a partner and finding it come to like a satisfying resolution for everybody, like all the time. And I'm sure it's not going to be all the time. It's not going to be like that for the rest of my life perfectly, but the batting average is great, and it's awesome to just have conversations that lead somewhere, to lead to a resolution, and then both people go away feeling really satisfied. And then if there's any like stuff that you didn't feel, little unaddressed parts, things that maybe stuff that you felt in your body, but it didn't rise to your conscious mind because you're avoidant. That stuff, it's always there, and it's safe, and it's welcome, and it's fruitful to just bring it up later when you do have the awareness. And so it's like there's no constant need to repress things, deny things. There's no pervasive need to just avoid in general.
Yeah.
You don't have to avoid stuff. You can address it, and it feels good and it feels better that way. So that's it for the romantic. I mean, I'm sure there's so much more.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, I just want to share my experience too. And
Yeah.
if you can resonate as well. But I would always be so afraid to share for fear of, like, I already thought I was defective and screwed up. So I was worried that what I would say would be like, what's wrong with you? Like, you think that? Like, so I was so worried about saying kind of the wrong thing. But I would almost ask people now, like, hey, like, I want to share something and it's vulnerable and I'm worried that you're going to judge me for it. But like, I almost need someone to give me assurance that, like, listen, I would rather you say whatever you have, like what's going on inside of you. Let me know. Like, that is way more going to be helpful. And then we can work through this together than you holding it in and feeling shame or feeling, like you're going to upset me or say something that's wrong. So really, like, I still, it's hard for me sometimes, but just for anybody out there who tries to get their maybe avoidant to open up, just know, like, if you can assure safety that you're not going to blow up, you're not going to get mad, like, you might not love what the person's going to say, or they might say something that might be like, oh, geez, I didn't know you thought that. But obviously, like, letting them know, it's 8,000 times better to let me know now. It might be a little hurtful, but then at least, they'll know the score, they'll know what's going on, and then you can actually work towards something together. Does that sort of resonate with you and how you were in the past versus now?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And that's something that's still like there's a little there's a tiny little layer of feeling, like a shade of shame around being vulnerable and bringing stuff up, because it's like, hey, I have this issue that I need reassurance on. And yeah, my old comfort zone was to feel ashamed about that and to never bring anything up.
Yeah.
But now it's really beautiful and reassuring to receive or to be able to express those things, like an insecurity about something, and then have my partner say, that's not a problem. And
Yeah.
I don't feel anything bad about you sharing it. In fact, I'm glad you shared it.
Totally.
And to have that flip is kind of mind-blowing, because that's for DAs, for avoidance, so it's like a really core dynamic, is the shame around vulnerability, appearing to be weak and to not have everything figured out, and to not be perfectly strong and impenetrable and untouchable. It's
Definitely.
like, yeah.
And it's such exposure response too, eh? Like, you go to do it maybe the first time and you're like, it's almost like throwing a grenade and then like waiting for the backlash. But then when they're like, that's okay, like, that's not that big of a problem, you're like, really? Oh, okay. So the more you do it, then the more you get comfortable with it. And like you said, it really does bring you closer to your partner. The more they can know about what's going on inside of you, the more they feel honored that you're sharing with them. And the more they can know sort of what your triggers are and, how you operate. We always want to know sort of what's going on with the other person. Otherwise, you have to guess. And we all know when you have to play guesswork, how well that goes. So that's great. I love that. And I love that you've had that growth for yourself.
So I have some really exciting news, and it's that integrated attachment theory training is back. In other words, you can be trained to become a relationship coach certified in integrated attachment theory in literally 60 days. So who's this for? Well, of course, this is for any individual who wants to make an impact and really be of service to others while also obtaining freedom and flexibility and abundance in their lives. And this is also for anybody who's already a counselor, a therapist, a coach, and just really wants to expand their toolkit. We've had so many people enter into the integrated attachment theory program because they're just looking to obtain a certain degree of mastery in terms of understanding their own attachment patterns and also the attachment patterns of maybe their children
or partner or other loved ones in their lives so they can really support those people and understand them more deeply. Now, please keep in mind that the last 2 times we ran this program, we filled up very fast. In fact, we oversold the programs and sold out completely. So if you're interested, click the link below to learn more and dive in with me. And I'd love to see you on the other side before seats run out.
Okay, so I just want to move the conversation into, we love to know what people are doing on a regular basis to sort of keep themselves in a good place, to keep them grounded. So, you hear a lot about self-care when you watch personal development videos. I just want to know, what does self-care look like for Ben?
Yeah, that's a lot. It's for me, it's always keeping on top of my food. And so for whatever reason, I think I've never had like a big internal response to like hunger, and that's just something that's not there for me. And so I remember growing up and even into adulthood, I'd get severely low blood sugar and feel really, really wonky, and that would do like emotional stuff, right? When you have low blood sugar. But I never felt like the hunger pangs. It would just be like, oh, I'm in a really bad mood and I've been there for 3 hours. And then I would eat a bunch of calories and it just goes away and I feel fine. And so for me, keeping my calories like topped off, like making sure I'm eating healthy food and enough food all the time, for my weight and my activity level is really important. And I have to do that in the absence of like body impulses that are telling me that it's something that I have to do cognitively or with a schedule and stuff. So I have to keep that in mind. So that's super duper basics self-care. That's like survival care, but it's something I have to consciously think about. So that's kind of a weird one. But other than that, activity for sure, movement, I need that. And I want to say that's like an absolute must every day. But I know there's days that I drop it and I don't feel as good as a result of that. But walking helps me, it regulates my nervous system. It helps me process really well and meditate as I walk. So it's kind of like, I don't know how to put this. It's like there's stuff stuck in there, and walking for an extended period every day, like at least an hour, it kind of shakes it out. And it's sort of like Tetris, like you have all the little different colored block pieces and their different shapes and stuff. And the objective is to get them down to the bottom, but then have them be in flush, complete rows so they can be removed. I hope people know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure everybody does, but it's like that. It's like having those blocks like shaken down, and so then they can kind of like just be released or whatever. And it's like emotions and unaddressed stories, all the kinds of little things that build up throughout the days that maybe you're not always thinking consciously of. But then doing something like that, moving your body, it brings it to conscious awareness, and then it also kind of helps resolve things. And there's something, I don't know the exact mechanism at this point in time, but there's something about having your body engaged with some degree of fitness, or like a higher level of activity that just facilitates that whole process of regulating everything and getting things like sorted inside. At least that's how it is for me. So that's a big one. And then there's like meditation. There are a lot of different types of meditation, and so I dabble in different types. I'm by no means an expert in any of that, but it's I just feel it out and see what I need at the time. Whether I need to do like a body scans, focus on my body, whether I need to meditate and kind of like watch the thoughts like leaves go down the stream, and not pursue them, not engage with them, but just accept that they're there and observe them, and then let them go, and then see what comes next. That's a really good one. Breathing, focused breathing. Focusing on the breath is always good, and there's a lot of different ways to go about that. And so I'm still kind of playing with that, but some form of meditation every day is really important. And also like bodily care to some degree, along with the exercise, like caring for my body and my appearance. And you got the diet, caring for my diet, sleep, all that stuff kind of integrated together. That's really important for me, because it's like me caring for myself, me being present with myself, and having that awareness and that attunement to show myself consistent love there. And that's kind of important for all of us to experience. But for me, it's been a subject of like focused intention for a while.
Yeah. Those are great. Those are really amazing. And I love the Tetris analogy. I've never heard it before, but I think that's really, really cool. Do you actually like visualize the Tetris board as you're walking, or you just have that analogy as that's what?
No, I have that analogy because that's the one that kind of fits. I also feel like I don't know what it is, but there's like a machine where you see it at like casinos or something. I don't know, but it's like a vertical board that has a whole bunch of pins in it.
Yeah.
And then you operate it, and like a disc or a coin or something or a ball drops down from above, and it bounces between all that. And then sometimes it's a lot of them, and you want it to go in certain areas. And that's another thing that's very similar to the Tetris analogy. It's just, that's what it kind of feels like.
Yeah.
If I could describe the somatic experience in visual form, that's what it is. Like stuff kind of getting sorted and falling out and then no longer being present.
Right.
Yeah.
And the food analogy was so spot on. Like I was laughing during it because, me and you were talking a little before the interview, and I think we have so many similar things that we, have struggled with and have had to overcome and whatnot. But like the eating thing for me, it's so basic. It's a survival need, but because I can sometimes be so in my head and so worried about other stuff, I just don't pay attention to like what my body needs in the moment. So that's why it's so important to check in regularly with your body, which avoidants are not always used to doing. But yeah, I can't tell you how many times where like, I'll have to start like a Zoom meeting, and then 2 minutes into the meeting, I'm like starting to feel like tired and weak. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm starving right now. 2 minutes before that, I didn't even realize it. Right. But if I was checking in with my body regularly, I would have known, okay, give yourself a snack, you're starting to feel a little dip in the energy. It's time to eat. So I totally resonate with you. And yeah, maybe it sounds funny for some people because it's a basic survival need, but I totally get you there. And I love how now, you're really checking in and you're making sure that those needs are taken care of. So that's really great. Thanks for sharing.
Can I add something on there?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
I think, and this is just for like the listeners, but it's totally connects to like needs integration and needs awareness and needs strategizing. Because for me, I do the same thing where like I get involved in something and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm starving or I'm really thirsty or whatever, or I'm super tired and I didn't take care of that previously well enough. But then it's usually like I'm in an experience where I'm focused on another need, and that's just kind of going, and I'm a little bit on that like in that autopilot zone where I'm just kind of following the trail. Like maybe I'm at work and I'm really focused on something, or maybe I'm painting or reading or whatever, and it's like there's a little bit of hyperfixation on that activity, and so the other one is not present, and it kind of shows that I still have work to do on like needs integration and strategizing, and then maybe a little bit of scheduling and sticking to that. But yeah,
it's so funny. And then I was just thinking, when I get 2 minutes into the Zoom meeting and I find out I'm starving, then the next 58 minutes I'm like starting to feel like panicky, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like my brain almost says like, we're not doing any creative thought for you anymore until food. And then I'm really worried that I'm not going to show up well in the meeting, and what I'm sharing isn't really making sense. And it just turns into a whole just crazy time. So definitely checking in with the body is super important regularly. And if you stop and listen, it's sort of always telling you what you need and what's going to sort of bring you to the most happiness, most energy, most creative flow. So that's really, really interesting.
Totally.
So I guess we talked about routines, non-negotiables. Let's go into a little more fun stuff. What does Ben like to do for fun? What does Ben like to do when he lets his beautiful long hair down?
Yeah. I mentioned painting. I'm getting into that recently, and I'm loving that. I do some reading. It's kind of funny because I hate to read, but I also love to know things. And I also love to engage with like the mind of authors. But sometimes that can be a lot. So I am one of those people that regularly buys books and regularly stacks them up and doesn't read them all. But I'm working on it. You're working on like 5 books at once, and that's me slowly doing that. Let's see. Yeah, painting. I love nature. I love being out in nature. I love walking, and I love to just experience it and see new things out there. I do have a little bit of hobby interest in like natural sciences, and it's not very deep. Like I don't know that much, but I love to know about the plants and geology, the rocks, and like every single thing that goes into my environment at all times. It's just super fascinating for me. So I can get into all that stuff. I love seeing wild animals. Let me see. I like to watch TV for sure, but the needs are limited. So that's becoming a rarer occurrence, which is nice because that can just be like a time suck for me. And then socializing for me, that's been a big thing. And I guess that's something that I didn't focus on in the question before about changes in relationships, but having my friendships change drastically has been a big area of growth. And so lots of the negative beliefs and things around there have received a lot of work, and I'm experiencing the fruits of that. So
nice. Yeah, for myself and friends, I think I met my friends when I was in my most people pleasing times, and just wanted people to like me. And then now that I've done a lot of healing on my wounds, I can really show up as myself and be myself, and it's just a lot more energy management, not using as much energy as I'm hanging out with my friends, worried about like, oh, did I say the right thing? Was that funny enough? So it's really beautiful, again, healing the wounds, how the relationship with your friends change that dynamic. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of the podcast, and again, Ben, thanks for being here. So I wanted to let our viewers know and maybe give them an insight. If there's someone who's listening or who's watching who is DA, is maybe just finding out about their attachment style and wants to dig into this work, but might feel a little scared, worried, nervous, or even not believing that they can change. They're just sort of too far gone. What would you sort of say to them as somebody who, 3 years ago, who might have been going through the same thing?
So there are so many areas that have changed so much in my life. And I would say that even though there's times where it's been painful, especially for me as an avoidant, with learning to slowly feel safe with the emotions, over time, kind of like sticking with that discomfort has been the most valuable thing, because what you get from it is so huge. And I have these skills with me for the rest of my life. I know them, and I'm going to bring them with me everywhere I go. And also, as I'm exposed to new experiences, I have these with me, and so I can address everything that arises, everything that I encounter, and do the processing, look at the meaning that I'm giving it. Yeah, so there's so much. There's like way too much there, but I would say that the tools are there and it's worth it. And you can do it in a way that feels comfortable for you, so it doesn't feel too, scary, uncomfortable, or even unsafe. You can do it in a way that's really caring for yourself. And I wouldn't, even if I had only done like one of the courses or only got a little bit of coaching, then I would have benefited greatly and never wanted to go back. But to keep going with it, it's like, it's obvious for me. It's totally worth it.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to also mention to any dismissive avoidants who are thinking about possibly joining the school, like, our community is so supportive and like helpful. And I know maybe, you might see comments on YouTube videos when there's a DA video, or Instagram comments, and, DAs can get like a pretty bad rap and might feel like everybody, is ripping on them and doesn't like them. Really in the schools, it's complete opposite. And I host a lot of the weekly community routines that we hold, and people love it when DAs show up. They first of all give so much respect, and really happy that they're coming there to do the brave work, but they love to hear from them as well. When they share, everybody just like wants to hear what's going on, because DAs aren't as apt to sort of open up and share their inner world. So when DAs are sharing in my routines, I see people really just loving it and getting so much information from it, and hearing sort of what's happening for their inner world, so they can apply it to their relationships and understand what's going on there. And we have so many, I call them DA whisperers in the school, who just, they understand DAs now. They now really know exactly how to get them to open up and what they need. But again, knowing their part in how they can heal themselves. It's not all about like coddling a dismissive avoidant and just, rearranging your whole life and your needs and your wants just to make sure that they're comfortable. It's not about that at all. But the more you know about someone and their trauma, the more you know about you and your trauma and your triggers, it's just going to be a lot easier to make it work with someone. So yeah, just dismissive avoidance, just know, like, if you come into the personal development school, you'll see how nice and friendly and supportive everyone is. And Ben works for Personal Development School now. You'd see him at webinars and community events and all sorts of places. So yeah, we hope that some people will take the challenge and join and come grow with us. Okay, so as we close, Ben, what are you offering these days? Is there services, like what are you offering to the public these days?
Yeah, so we're gearing up to do some more webinars to add a little bit more support there for people in other time zones. That'll be happening in the next couple of weeks. And probably by the time this podcast is out, it'll already be live for sure. But then also through PDS, you can go into the coaching section and find a coach. And I'm there among a few others of highly qualified people. And so I'm offering one-on-one coaching, and we kind of do like, it can be kind of anything you want, but the typical structure is like a 12 or 16 week thing, and that's going through the tools, gaining probably not mastery, but I'm there to just kind of facilitate teaching you the tools and giving you enough of a handle on that you can then take that with you for like the rest of your life. So it's kind of it's like a productivity and results oriented approach. So it's really supportive, and I've benefited from that with other people, and so I'm offering that, and I'm very pleased to do so.
That's amazing. And if anybody, a non-member, wanted to get a hold of you, are you doing coaching outside, or is it mainly at the moment coaching just through the personal development school?
So right now it's just through the personal development school, and I might have like an outside line at some point. But yeah, just follow or go to the coaching page on the PDS website, and I'm right there. And you don't have to be like a subscribing member of PDS, like taking the courses or anything like that, to sign up for coaching. It's available to members and non-members.
Perfect. Okay. And we'll put some links in the show notes if anybody's interested in working with Ben. And that would be great. Ben, that was really awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say before we call it a day?
No, I think we said a lot. That's a good, yeah.
Said a lot for dismissive avoidant.
Yeah.
But no, thanks so much. This was informative and fun, and I hope our listeners enjoyed this one. And yeah, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Yeah.